and welcome. Today we have the Reverend Al Sharpton, who is an internationally renowned civil rights leader, founder and president of the National Action Network, which has more than 100 chapters across the country. You can call them when you have a problem. I think that's amazing. It's wonderful. Hailed by former President Barack Obama as a champion for the downtrodden, Reverend Sharpton is the host of Politics Nation on MSNBC, a nationally syndicated daily radio show. You do more than that, though, honey. I mean, you are some kind of amazing, and thank you for being with us tonight. How are you?
I'm doing well and always glad to be with you, Jamie, whatever you're doing.
We have a lot, a lot of things in common, a lot of history together, you know.
And so yeah.
I'm just gonna probe you. I'm gonna take you everywhere. Okay, we're gonna think about what are we doing? What about leadership? That's the first thing in my mind. You're out there, and I called Jesse Jackson's. I called Santita, his daughter, and said, "Is Jesse speaking? What's going on?" We see Reverend Sharpton, but we're not really seeing anyone else. And this is a concern of mine. And also, I'm really concerned about the pastors in the church, which is where we should be looking for leadership. But they're not talking about how to make it through the day and what's going to happen and what to do next, Pastor. And so I'm just kind of like, what do we do? How do we manage all that's going on right now?
I think that we're in a very particular place that we've not been at before. We're in a pandemic where no one would have imagined that we would be in a situation where 500,025 people died and millions infected, and no one seemed to have had the answer. Then when they come with the vaccines, given the history of our people with medical professionals, we obviously had hesitancy. And I think that the role of leadership is that you've got to understand your techniques, but you have to be able to apply them to the time in which you live. Our people need guidance and hope, and to try to be a light in the storm. So as we were grappling with this pandemic, all of us with friends and family that was dying, then in the middle of all of that, George Floyd happens, and Breonna Taylor happens, and Ahmaud Arbery happens, one right after another. And you have to weigh between how you deal with the injustices and deal with it where people are not endangered. I remember when I went out to do the eulogy for George Floyd, both in Minneapolis and then later in Houston, we had as much concern about how we were going to distance people at the funerals as we did with the message we're going to give. Because the message, people are watching all over the world, but at the same time, you're dealing with a crowd that you don't want to get infected and cause more harm. So leadership has to be deliberate, intentional, and committed, and you've got to know how to deal with any unforeseen circumstances at the time in which it's happening.
Well, years ago, you had Jesse, Martin Luther King. There were so many people. Reverend Lowry. You by yourself now? I mean, who else is out there? I look to you. But and Jesse, I hadn't heard from for a while. But I understand that he's still active. But I don't know where our people can go. I don't know who's going to tell us how to navigate all of these things that are happening to us at once. Peace of mind. We're afraid for our children. We're afraid for our lives. And so many things that have come down on us. And you seem to be able to manage it all. I don't know if that's just, you have wisdom and you have history, but you also have God.
I think you hit it right on the head. I think that my faith has brought me through. I was well trained by Jesse and Reverend Lowry. I grew up in the movement. So I sort of go on what I learned in terms of techniques and strategy, but I have faith in God and trust that he will guide and bring us through. By growing up a boy preaching, I never learned how to read a manuscript, which is why when I started my TV show, I was not good with a teleprompter because I never read a sermon. I always just preached from my heart.
Mhm.
So a funny thing, and I've not said this to anybody, but because you and I is like me and you having a conversation and nobody's watching, though some people do watch you clearly. But when I was walking to the platform to preach, I had no idea what I was going to say. And just out of the spirit of the movement and the moment, I looked down at George Floyd's casket and thought about how this man had this knee on his neck. And it said to me that what made this resonate so to people around the world is that they've always had their knee on our neck. And that ended up being my eulogy. Get your knee off our neck. We would have been bigger in Hollywood, but you had your knee on our neck. We'd have been bigger in politics, but you had our knee on our neck. We saw in that knee on George Floyd's neck, the knee on our neck at work every day, at school every day. And we always knew we were better than we were allowed to be. They were holding us down rather than we didn't have the ability to rise to the occasion. And I think that that is what a visionary leadership has to be. You've got to be able to express what people feel, even if they can't articulate
it. This is true. I think what I'm concerned about here in so many ways, Pastor, is that we are some of our worst enemies. We talk about ourselves in the worst way. We talk about our women. We talk about our men, and we don't understand what is it called, buck breaking. We don't understand all that was done to us, when they brought us here in slavery, but all that it was done to us with the new kind of slavery of putting all of our people in prisons over the drugs. And I think maybe the younger people need to understand we're not naturally ignorant people. Things were done to us and to our communities to send us to prison, to have our women talked about as if they're nothing but whores, and then we talk worse about our men. He ain't nothing and all that, How do we break that, Pastor? Because that bothers me more than anything, because that's a constant denouncing of people in our race. The difference.
I think that you've got to. I look at it biblically, and when the children of Israel in the Bible were brought across the Red Sea and was headed to the Promised Land, they got lost in the wilderness, and they started worshiping golden calves and graven images and tearing up each other's families.
I was going to bring that.
Yeah. And I think that we've gotten a wilderness psychology. Okay. They used to call us the N-word. Now we call ourselves that. That's wilderness.
Yes, that's wilderness.
They used to degrade our women. Now we call them hoes and bees. That's wilderness psychology. And we've got to come out of this wilderness mentality to get to the Promised Land, because we've made achievement despite all the oppression. We elected and re-elected a Black man president that we didn't even know his name well for the first year. And now we have a Black woman in the White House. That's not the time to be calling our women hoes. We have a vice president to come out of a historic Black college, and many of us are treating our women like they're nothing. And the message of this generation cannot be that we can swing our behind, but that we can use our mind. And that's where I think the new leadership will rise up and say, wait a minute, we've got to stop this nonsense. One of the two other things that I think is important that we're missing is that they have caused this generation divide. It's the old against the young, the elders, the young people didn't listen. Well, anywhere in the world, they marvel and take wisdom from the elders. In Africa, the elders were the ones that led the tribe. And we cannot not take counsel from those older. I started as youth director of Operation Breadbasket. I call Jesse now, even though he's been sick, and get guidance. You never can underestimate those that have already traveled the road you're on. They may not be able to run as fast as you are, but they know the road better than you do. And you need those that know the road. The last thing is we've lost the ability to tell our own story to ourselves. That's why what you did with your periodicals and writings down through the years was so important. You developed a magazine and others where Blacks talked for Blacks. We got outside advertising, but it was ours. Mm-hmm. Now we are having hired hands of white media institutions tell our story with their permission. Mm-hmm. And I think until we get back to respecting the wisdom of our elders and having the ability and ownership of our own story, that we will always have a distortion where we are more entertainment than enlightenment.
How can we stay vigilant? What do we do daily to protect our families, to stay safe and have peace of mind? There's so much going on. In terms of having children today, our children, we can't protect our children from hearing all kinds of things, from seeing the worst of us. And I don't know how to, as a mother, my kids are grown, but I don't just think about me. I think about that lady up the street with her child. The child sees everything. There's so many killings and there's so many rapes and all this everyday shootings and all that. How do we protect ourselves in terms of, not to get overwhelmed, not to get despondent, because a lot of us, the church, some of the churches are not even open now, Reverend. And also, I looked for leadership from the ministers. You guys were ministers that led us, and now I don't know of any other minister than you, and I may be wrong. I don't know everything.
Well, there are some, but they're not out there public. I think that we've got to be more grounded. If there's one thing that I'd hoped for during the pandemic, is that because we were shut in, that we would bond more with our families and would talk more and be more grounded. Study what made grandma get through when grandma couldn't read or write. Is what she had inside her. It was her belief. Our strength never came from the external because we weren't allowed to have external. Our strength came internally. And we've got to get our young people back to understanding it is not the perks, it is not the wardrobe, it's your internal strength that'll make you survive. They will use you and throw you away. They can't throw away what you have in your mind and in your heart. And that comes from an internal spiritual relationship with God.
When you say they will use you and throw you away, it makes me think about Michael Jackson. You and I both were very, very involved with that family and with him. I went to Europe with him for like 6 days. I was in Japan with him. Everybody loving him. Everybody, calling out for Michael. You were there also with Raymond Bain, who was his publicist, and a loving soul. But when they were ready to chew you up and send you out, there was no stopping that. I mean, Michael could not do anything, no matter how much money he gave away, how much love he showed, how many people he tried to help. They decided to crucify him. And
Michael had me come to Neverland when he was going through his controversy. And I'll never forget, we walked around the grounds and he showed me where certain stars got married at this rock and certain people would do this at his house. And he said, I call them now, Reverend Al, and they won't even return my call. And then they indicted him, put him on trial. And I remember talking to him on the phone. I said, Michael, you remember when the people at Sony Records tell you to stay away from your father, don't listen to Miss Catherine?
Yes.
Now the only people walking in that courtroom every day with you is Catherine and Joseph and your brothers and sisters. At the end of the day, it was the family that had to surround him after those that had told him to stay away from the family crucified him and left him to dry. And then when he died, and I say prematurely, they all wanted to come and eat it. They didn't want his mother as part of his estate. And they tried to are making billions off of him. After a week before he died, they wouldn't return his phone call.
They wouldn't return his phone call, right? I know. This is so, I got a chance to stay with him. I mean, be around him for 6 days in Japan. So, and I got a chance to, how he loved his children. Even his children have not, they've been persecuted to a certain extent, especially for the daughter. She's had some some things said to her and about her. You fought so hard for our rights, our civil rights, and said, we've come far. How can we go further? What bothers you the most today about
bothers me the most is that we're not dealing with the fact that a whole generation of our men have been put in jail.
Mhm.
We need to deal with criminal justice reform and bring down these high incarcerations. We need to change the laws that put our people in jail 10 to 20 years for what others go to jail for 6 months to a year, if that.
If they go at all, yes.
If they go at all, if they even get prosecuted. We need to deal with the economic problems in our community. There was a time we could go to any city and know the businessmen. They put them all out of business. I would go to Chicago and you go from John Johnson to Al Johnson to Al Boutte and Independence Bank, all the way across the board. Now, none of them. And I think that we've got to get back to basics, economics, as well as owning and operating in our community. And we've got to reclaim the ownership of our music, because we are now, all of the music business is 3 or 4 conglomerates. There are no little Motown, no little Stax records. So we don't control our own culture. We don't control who speaks for us, and we don't control the media that speaks to us.
So when you brought that up, I was thinking about the Thong Song that came out. Thong Song, the Thong Song that came out some years ago was a big hit, and how I'm forgetting his name. Oh my God, he had little blonde hair. It was just the cutest guy, and they were living the vida loca. Well, that one phrase inside the Thong Song was huge. That one phrase belonged to a Hispanic guy. They borrowed it from his song. Do you know who got the bulk of the money from the Thong Song?
No.
The Hispanic guy, not the producers, not the talent. You know, it was just it broke my heart when I found out about that. And we have to learn. We have to know more. I want us to be more. We have to learn how to be more obedient. So now let me go back to the church, because that's the only place that you really see any leadership. That's the leadership that was you and Martin Luther King and many of the pastors back in the day. But I don't see them talking to us about that. I'm not even taking 15 minutes out of the service to talk about, listen, this is what's about to happen in the community, and we need to do X, Y, Z. And I know the church is supposed to be separation of church and state. I understand that, but we're in dire straits right now. These are tough times. So do you talk to the ministers around here about informing us what's about to happen if we don't do thus and so and all that? Mm-hmm.
I challenge the ministers, because I say, if you read the Bible, God never called prophets or preachers that did not deal with the needs of the people at that time.
Right.
We don't read Moses' sermons. We read Moses leading people out of slavery.
Exactly.
We read Jeremiah prophesying about the wickedness of kings. For every Nebuchadnezzar, there was 3 Hebrew boys. For every Belshazzar, there was a Daniel. So why are y'all not dealing with what's going on right now? You didn't get that out the Bible. You cannot be cowardly and hold God's word. And I challenge them, and many in National Action Network young ministers, I'm saying to them, if you are preaching a pie in the sky gospel and not preaching what the gospel means on earth, you can't get to heaven. You don't preach in heaven, you preach on earth to get to heaven. And too many of us are too heavenly bound to be any earthly good.
No, now on Sundays, I watch like 4 sermons, and they're all around the same thing. Like if you're going to talk about Jonah and the whale or whatever, everybody preaches. Is it a certain time of year that you preach a certain kind of sermon or what?
Some do. But you need to be preaching about not what God did with Jonah, what God can do now. If you don't do that, then you are irrelevant in your time. And I think that many of us have a historic reference to God, like God is still not powerful. It's that God needs us to stand up, and God will hold us up. And that's the way I was trained, and that's what I'll do to the day I die.
But Reverend, don't you get, there's so much, you don't get discouraged at all? Do you feel like, I'm just talking to the wall? I mean, you're the one who's important today. There's no one standing next to you equally as important or revered as you are today. Why is that?
I get discouraged, but then I like I said, I was blessed to grow up under Joe Lowry and Jesse and Mrs. King. And I think about Dr. King, and I think about others that sacrificed. And no matter how lonely I get, I think about they went through lonely times. So this is the cross you bear. That, you know, the Bible said, Jesus said, if you want to follow me, pick up your cross and follow me. You got to bear the cross. And too many of us in the church, I'm talking about pastors, want to wear the crown and not bear the cross. You're going to have to bear a cross. But if you bear the cross, you'll wear the crown. If you get the crown without the cross, it won't stay on your head.
And let me ask you a little bit. I'm going to go to something that's more current today also. I mean, there's a lot of things that we have to unpack, I think. I'm going to ask you about Cuomo. And that, what do you think about, I mean, I thought this man was a miracle worker, the way he led us in the beginning with the coronavirus, and he just, you know, he taught us. He was a teacher. He was there every day. He was consistent. And now I hate that people can accuse you of something and you can lose so much without it ever being proven. You know, he hasn't even had a trial. You know, but
I've taken the position that he deserves an investigation, and let us wait on the results to come. You can't fight for justice for some and not for all. I don't know whether he's guilty or not, but then why are we saying he ought to be punished, and then we'll find out what happened? Find out what happened and litigate it, because it's a frightening thing if any accusation can take people down, then that will be used against us. So I agree with your frustration that I will not join in the crowd until I see what has happened. We have a state attorney general. She's a Black woman. She's doing an investigation. Let's wait on the results. And I think that you've got to always be suspect of people that want to run to a conclusion without looking through all the facts.
Well, why would you judge this man and tell him to lose his job? Not you, I'm saying, but without him having, I mean, someone could go kill someone and they won't crucify him or throw him in jail or whatever until they have a trial and they know that it happened. It's been, you know, they just want, oh, somebody said this, so take him out of his position without having any proof. No, there hasn't been a trial, nothing.
It's a dangerous precedent, because if it happens to him, it can happen to anyone, and you cannot have that in a society that's supposed to be based on justice. And I think you're absolutely right. And just like I cannot fight for Black young men and women in our community to don't prejudge them and then prejudge others, like you dealing in this case of the governor.
I'm always talking about Black men because, and everybody tells me all the advertisers are only interested in Black women because we have the jobs and everything. But you remember, they sent our men to jail and the women went to college and they got the degrees and I got them positions, the money and everything. But we need men. We need men in our homes, and you can't leave that out. So can you speak on that? Because you can't imagine the pushback I get when I talk about, you know, I care about Black men also, you know, so that they're very important to, not that Black women are not, but understand what was done to our men. People don't understand what was done to them. There was a pandemic on our families and on our men.
They locked up generations of Black men. They relegated them to where they had to do the hard work and not get paid. They emasculated Black men, and then they turn around and make an image of them like they were irresponsible when they were not. They were forced into that. And I think that we cannot ever have balance unless we exalt our men and our women. Not making you anti-woman is giving you the compliment of how society and how God made man and woman. And I think that to say that we're going to only deal with one side and not the other is to divide and conquer. And that's what reinforced slavery in the first place.
How do we remove this though? How do we remove this whole thing about our men are not important? Because every time I talk, even when I talk about advertising and stuff, and I say it's important, our men are important. Well, we're not dealing with men. It's all about the Black woman because she's the one that got the jobs and everything. Well, what? How are we supposed to continue? They continue with a male and female in their homes, you know.
You said it right there. we must not be fooled by people that would not do that themselves. They don't denigrate white men.
No,
And we should not allow them to denigrate Black women. You cannot have a complete community, neighborhood, or family unless you have strong men and strong women. It's not one or the other, it's both. They need to be helpmates of each other. And we've got to confront it head on, and we don't need to apologize about it.
Let me go to a little place, someplace else for just a minute. Okay. Can you tell me the Meghan Markle reveal and this whole thing about the race of the race of the children, the royal children, and what, you saw Oprah's interview with them.
Right.
What do you think about that? What do you think they should do? And where did that put you in your head?
I think that it shows that even in the highest levels of European elite, the royal family, the thought that there would be a dark skin, a Black child in Buckingham Palace unravels somebody. When she said to Oprah that one of them had brought this to Prince Harry, it couldn't have been a guard at the gate of Buckingham Palace because he couldn't talk personal business with Harry. It had to be somebody in the royal family or in the senior staff. To know that that's the way they think shows that we still have a long way to go with white racism at the highest levels. They are willing to give charities, they're willing to do things, but they still see themselves as superior to us, that we can't taint their families. And I think it was shocking to some, but it wasn't shocking to me. It was stunning, she said it, but it was not shocking because that's the way they've run their systems. And that's how they continue to run their systems. And we've got to stand up and fight back.
So I was sent something today where they, something called buck breaking. And that was really, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about buck breaking? They used to do to the Black males in order to, the horrors that were put down on Black people. I feel we don't know that enough. And if we knew more about what was done to us and know today how we came out of it, we are a strong race. We are miracles. I look at us as miracles, especially our Black men, because, Reverend, think about this. There's no other race in the world where their music, their language is emulated in China, India, Russia. Everybody sings our music. Now, some of it is denigrating, right? But they adopt what we do. We're so powerful inside. We don't know how powerful we are. They know how powerful we are. That's why they used to rape the men and rape the children, and it did terrible things to us. And yet people think that, well, why can't we all just get along?
Well, when you look at it, what you're saying is so true. When you look at the fact, I was thinking about this during the pandemic, that we were taken from the shores of West Africa and brought across the Atlantic Ocean, chained to each other. Somebody on your right may be dead. They didn't remove the body. No. You had to ride for weeks with a dead body on one side, somebody sick with malaria on the other. And we survived to get here, which means only the strongest Africans, the most endurable, were the ones that got here. We are the children of the strongest people that survived the most vicious form of slavery in the known to man. Then when those strong people survived this tumultuous ocean, they took their names, they separated their families. They wouldn't even let you call your child after you. You were named after the slave master. We survived all of that. It was against the law for us to read and write. Now we're presidents of universities. We don't know who we are. We're the strongest people in creation because no one suffered what we suffered, yet we endured. So we can only denigrate ourselves and by not realizing the strength that's in us. In our blood, in our bloodline, is the bloodline of the greatest survivors and the strongest people the world has ever known in history.
I know how great we are, Pastor, because I lived in Europe for 9 years. And that's when I saw our beauty, ingenuity, our cunning, Our minds are, we're exemplary, and everybody wants what we have, but we have not learned to value what we have, to value one another, to value our children, value our men, to value what little we get. We're an amazing race. And I realized that when I was taken from me, I lived in Sweden 9 years, so I saw the big difference. And the Swedish men are cute and everything, but everybody wanted our man.
When we look at the fact that whatever they gave us, we were able to master it and turn it around. That we couldn't even eat the good food. And we take hard guts and made it a cuisine and put hot sauce on it, named the chitlins. And they start wanting to know what the chitlins taste like. We take the music they wouldn't let us have and turned it around with our rhythms that came from the villages of Africa. And everyone sings our song. Their children sing our songs and emulate our stars. We don't realize our strength. Everyone in the world imitates us, and we're trying to be everything but us. We need to embrace who we are.
So are there any programs, Pastor, that, I'm really concerned. The reason why I'm doing this, because I could just, retire and get a boyfriend somewhere. But I'm hurting because of what we're saying to one another, how we're treating one another, all the shows that show no compassion at all towards, just people ask me, oh, you got to watch this show, watch that. I said, I can't watch those shows, because we're not doing anything but denigrating ourselves.
How could we be entertained with denigration? How could we go from, as you know, I was very close with James Brown, like a son.
I know.
And our last conversation, he called me about 2 weeks before he died. And he said, Reverend, what happened to us? He said, I had blacks singing Black and Proud. Aretha had them singing Respect. Now every song's calling us niggas, hoes, and bitches. How did we get here? And until y'all turn that around, we're not gonna make progress. And I've committed my life remembering that in my head. I refuse to watch our Black women. We had people like Abbott Lincoln and others representing Black beauty at its height. And now we run around tearing each other's hair weaves out on TV, acting like that's entertainment. That's denigration, that's not entertainment.
Well, Pastor, this is one reason I came back, because I love my children. I'm in love with Black people. I was devoid of them for 9 years. Swedish people are wonderful people, but I realized how powerful we were by not being around them and how we influenced the world. And I'm so glad, I'm so happy you're out there, you're speaking out. We're running out of time, but I'm coming back for you and you come for me. Also, I'll come and speak.
Well, I want you to be involved. We in National Action Network are trying to build this, but we need, Jamie, we need those that know the way to show the way. And we need to be able to show real Black womanhood who stands with Black men and as an example, so our people to know who they are. So keep calling on me.
I'm going to call because I need you, because I'm kind of like out here by myself. I don't think people really understand what's going on some levels, but I'm in love with you all. I don't think there's anything better on this earth. I look at you and I say, look at my baby go.
Let's put it together. Let's put it together.
Thanks for staying with me. Say hello to the family. I adore your family.
All right. Thank you.